From Chicago, welcome to 3Degrees Discussions. I'm your host, Mike Vasquez. This is a podcast devoted to the stories behind the innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders of the 3D printing industry.
And it's all about education with yourself and your teams to make sure that you can go in and speak intelligently and teach the customers what is available. And as an end user, having all these different technologies and so many different solutions available to you, just understanding each one of those and being able to choose which one sort of meets your challenges, because we all have challenges and not all the solutions actually will solve what your challenge is. And you want to make sure that you understand your end customer outcomes. Is it highest quality? Is it saving cost? Is it getting weight out of the part? Is it, what is the challenge of the customer, and trying to be able to solve for that with the technology? And in our case, it's software, so it's workflow optimization. So we can help save cost, and we can optimize and make it easy for folks, as opposed to going in 100 different directions.
That was Michelle Bockman. Michelle is the CEO of 3DPrinterOS. Previous to her current role, she was the general manager and global head of 3D printing and digital manufacturing at HP. She has also worked at GE and has a background in mechanical engineering from University of Missouri-Rolla. She joins the show to compare and contrast her experience working in a large organization entering the 3D printing market versus a startup trying to build something from the ground up. Well, thanks for joining the show, Michelle. Why don't we get started with you sharing a little bit about your background and how you got into the additive manufacturing space?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me on. I started in additive manufacturing, if you can believe it, 20 years ago. It was one of my first jobs right out of school, and I was working in the automotive industry, and we made some parts for an axle to do a tolerance stack. And so we were actually in the engineering lab and made a part and put in the axle along with the other components, because we weren't changing out all the designs, just this one. And it was my first experience, and I got to see the 3D printer at the time. And then I have this sort of digital or manufacturing weave throughout my whole career. And then that takes me to about 3.5 years ago when I joined HP, truly in 3D printing. And but even before that, I was at GE Healthcare, and I ran our global parts and repair services, our spare parts for all of healthcare. And I worked with our additive manufacturing lab there on trying to figure out how do we make parts on demand that are end of life, and so we don't have to spend a lot of money on carrying costs with inventory or last time buys or anything like that. So that was kind of when I guess the additive manufacturing industry sort of started taking off. We started seeing sort of that cross into series production more and more. And then I joined HP and came over and really ran our applications, business development, partnerships, et cetera, and then ended up taking on the role to build a P&L for our automotive industry business. And there we started out with it was just me and another person, and then we built out the team, and our whole goal was about driving 3D printing adoption. So helping our customers learn how to design. So we did a bunch of workshops, and then how to stack the parts or build the parts, and in a more efficient way. And so we do business cases to get ROIs and things like that. And then the end part, and sometimes it was post-processing we would help them with, but it was sort of that end to end. And then more recently, I left HP and came over to 3DPrinterOS as a CEO, and it's a startup. It's something I've been dying to do for a while, because I've been in startups within larger corporations like HP and then GE, and so I was really just excited to go out there and try this. And I love 3D printing and the industry and the customers, and just the idea of trying to disrupt a traditional industry. And so I came over to 3D Printer OS. Well, I guess at the beginning of the year as an advisor, and then CEO about 3 weeks ago. And so far it's been crazy, 3 weeks in, and it's been fun. And I'm still super excited. We're working strategy and sort of that, reaching out to customers in the network, and really trying to tell our story, and how we've proven that we can be the end-to-end workflow in the additive manufacturing space with FDM or desktop printers, and now we're looking to expand more in the enterprise space, and so sort of like going from desktop and maker spaces to the enterprise into more of the production, because I do think that that's a gap in the industry with that workflow, that operating system that connects everything in a safe and secure manner, and to optimize it too, because it's pretty wonky today, trying to grab this from design to slicing, packing, et cetera, et cetera. So so that's a long answer for a short question, but that's how I got there and what I'm doing now.
So having started out in the AM space, kind of on the user side, what sorts of lessons and insights were you able to transfer over to, now you're on the software side, but also you were on the OEM kind of printer manufacturing side. Were there different perspectives or things that you were able to understand or appreciate as you kind of moved to different kind of sectors in the industry?
Yeah, definitely. As a user, as like the end customer, quality always came up as the thing that, if you're going to go into production, you need repeatability and accuracy, and so that just continued to be sort of at the forefront of everything that I was looking at when it came to 3D printing. And so being able to, first of all, get the right equipment, the right 3D printer is really important, and being able to use it, because it's a tool, and being able to sort of take the settings and really hone in on your application, and so you can have a repeatable and an accurate part over and over from machine to machine, or batch to batch manufacturing. So I'd say quality as an end user was really important. And then taking that to OEM, to HP, it was something that we talked about a lot, and worked on it. And there was a software program that the software team launched last year with the 5200, and that software helped create a more accurate and a repeatable part through interpolation as well as calibration. So I was really happy to see that. And then now that I'm in software, coming from both backgrounds beforehand, just knowing how wonky that process is, and going here to get this, and then going there, and having a lean background myself, you just know that there's ways to optimize this much better than it has been. And you see that with many industries in the past, where they started out with just kind of a technology, just trying it, and then improving, and you see that with the computer industry, just where we came from the 90s till today. And that's kind of what I'm seeing, and with this process, this workflow, automating it and making it easy for the end user as well as the OEM, because they may not necessarily be the expert in software, but they will be the expert in their hardware and their firmware and the software that goes on the computer, but maybe not the workflow. And being able to be as an end user, being able to be agnostic and have many different printers, because a lot of customers out there have 3 or 4 different types of printers, and being able to connect them all and manage your production. Because I've also been in production in the traditional sense, and you have ERPs in place, you have PLM in place, and you're able to manage your production. And with the software that we provide, you're able to do that a lot easier than you have in the past.
And so you mentioned you spent a lot of time kind of focused on the automotive sector. Are there kind of unique aspects of automotive that stand out compared to other industries?
Well, automotive is very regulated, like healthcare or aviation. So that in itself is something that's unique when you start comparing, especially in 3D printing, because 3D printing mostly started out with in the maker space where people are just kind of making gadgets and fun things for around the house, and it's still the case today. However, when you get into a regulated industry, everything changes. You go through your design and you optimize the design, and then you go through a whole host of tests, whether it's vapor testing or temperature testing, just a lot, tension testing, all of that. And so that's a little more unique. It's just very stringent to go through those, and you want that as a consumer of automobiles. You want to be in a safe car. And I would say some advice if you're thinking about going into the automotive industry is kind of choose the part of the vehicle that that you have capabilities for, and not get too far out of over your skis in something you can't do. And I think if you stay in that space that you can do, you'll be successful. And then partnering with the OEMs through the testing process is really important, because it's not necessarily a customer supplier relationship. It's really a partnership, because you both want to be successful in getting these parts through all of these testing requirements.
So how does the challenge of having so many different technology platforms available as a customer or an end user kind of impact how you guys think about your software, or even selling printers at your previous role at HP, when part of the job of the sales team and is talking about how many different options and why one is better, and almost educating the end user? Is there challenges there in trying to communicate a message with such a new technology?
Oh, yeah, new technology for sure, because it's a nascent market, and people, you are creating a market, and so education comes along with everything that you're doing. I was also in industrial cybersecurity, as well as digital manufacturing, where you're connecting machines, and both of those were nascent markets, and it's all about education with yourself and your teams to make sure that you can go in and speak intelligently and teach the customers what is available. And as an end user, having all these different technologies and so many different solutions available to you, just understanding each one of those and being able to choose which one sort of meets your challenges, because we all have challenges, and not all the solutions actually will solve what your challenge is. And you want to make sure that you understand your end customer outcomes. Is it highest quality? Is it saving cost? Is it getting weight out of the part? Is it, what is the challenge of the customer, and trying to be able to solve for that with the technology? And in our case, it's software, so it's workflow optimization. So we can help save cost, and we can optimize and make it easy for folks, as opposed to going in 100 different directions trying to make.
Sure. And when you think about your experience and working with customers, do you have a general opinion of putting yourself in the customer shoes, either for software or for the printer? Kind of, what are they most sensitive to? Are they cost sensitive? Are they brand name sensitive? Hey, we're going to go with an existing technology. Is it kind of function? Is it something else I'm not mentioning?
It's funny that you asked that question, because I see all of that, and everybody's a little bit different from the customer side. Whether it's a large company, like a Ford or a GM, and they're trying to find the latest and greatest technology. And it could be the name brand, like an HP, who's been around forever, and they feel pretty confident that HP is going to be around, forever. And and then you have some of the startup companies that people want to work with too, because they move fast and they're agile. They're able to make things happen, make changes on the fly, and just sort of resilience. And so I see all sides, and I've seen the shift from large companies just working with large companies to large companies working with startups because they want to infuse that culture into their own culture. And I think it's amazing. I mean, coming from GE, most of my career, it was great when we started embracing all of the startups and just in buying startups and making something from those startups. And like I said, infusing that culture into the rest of the company. It's powerful.
So kind of taking that a little bit further, you're kind of going from a big company, well, maybe a startup within a large company to a smaller company. Kind of what was your mindset in making that shift? What was the appeal to kind of a different culture or a different approach in working with the additive market?
Yeah, it's something I've been wanting to do for a few years, and I've been thinking about it and reflecting on my own career. Like, I was like, where did I have the most fun? Where did I make the most impact? And it was really when I was helping turn businesses around, or I was in a startup and we scaled the business and putting structures in place and just getting out and talking to customers and rolling up our sleeves and doing everything. And so that experience, I know it's not the same because it's under the umbrella of a corporation. However, I was like, I really want to do this. And so that was, what I had focused on. And I talked to a bunch of VC companies and just trying to understand the language and the type of people that they were hiring and just the whole landscape, because it's very different than what I had experienced before. But there's similarities too. But I just I really wanted to do it, and so I think coming because it's 3D printing and being able to leverage that background in my network, it was an easier transition to 3DPrinterOS or a VC backed company to because I had that background. Otherwise, I think it would have been a little harder to get into this world of startups.
So in your opinion, what sorts of lessons or structures translate best into the startup from a big company?
Well, every because I have been in startups within corporations for a while. Everybody does everything, and so nothing's beneath anyone. You're doing your own PowerPoints. You're setting up your own meetings sometimes, and it's just it's been fun, and I think that lessons that I can bring from big companies is some structure, some organization. Focus is a big one. A lot of times I see companies, not necessarily ours, but they use a spray and pray approach. Just get out to everyone and just see what happens and go into every industry. And I don't necessarily prescribe to that. I believe that we should figure out where we can fit best and go after that market and maybe a couple of others, but not everything. Otherwise, you get spread too thin and you get nothing done. So I'd say focus. Execution's another one too. Making sure that you can, the say-do ratio. Did you do what you said you were going to do? And that's really big for me. And I think that's another one that you can bring into the startup world. But organization, execution, agility, of course, but that's already there. I love the speed that we can move. It's like, yeah, let's make this change on the website, and it's done like the next day. We literally just did that 2 days ago, and knowing what I experienced in corporations, it doesn't happen that fast. It takes approvals and getting to the right people to make changes that quickly. So there's definitely lessons, but it goes both ways.
For sure. And with your current software, how do you guys think about kind of segmenting the market? Is that presumably when you think about kind of operating systems for additive process, especially in the industrial kind of sector, you have to think about kind of what sorts of industries and companies are far enough along in their adoption that this would actually make sense for them to implement or try to implement? Is there a framework that you guys think about that sort of problem?
Yeah, the way we're segmenting is kind of like what have we already been good at, and how do we just kind of expand? It's that land and expand layer process within customer success. It's so like we are in the university space. We're in over 50 universities, and the big ones like Duke and MIT, and we have a large amount of users in that space. So continuing to expand there. OEMs, Bosch is one of our OEMs, so we white label our software there. I think there's opportunities to work with others to do the same thing. And the majority of both of those segments are desktop. There are some industrial printers that we connect to, or we queue up to, integrate with. And then the last one is enterprise. And we are working with a couple of customers, as well as a government, U.S. Navy, as well as Google and John Deere. But I want to expand that, and so I'm utilizing my network of people I've known for 20 years, and going in and talking to them about our solution, and seeing if people are willing to work with us as a partner to go from this workflow, this automated end-to-end workflow that we have in the desktop FDM area, and then expand it over to enterprise. And so, before COVID hit, we were working with John Deere, and that was the direction we were headed there. And so now we're kind of starting over with me coming in and reaching out to my network. So that's how we're segmenting it. And there's also end users, obviously, not a huge population, but definitely important folks to make sure they're part of our market.
Do you see a particular industry as you move from kind of the academic space into the kind of enterprise area that is a big target or a big focus?
Yeah, I see automotive. Obviously, we're talking to a lot of the folks over there. Aviation, so we're definitely talking to and then government. So those have been sort of the three big areas that we've been focusing on in the last 2.5 weeks. So it will expand when we kind of get our feet wet and start getting in there. But right now, those are our focus areas, and I want us to be successful there.
And in my experience with kind of the software and the additive space, there's always comes a conversation with whoever you're working with, whether it's university or probably less so with university, but certainly in the enterprise side of you're bringing in new technology, additive manufacturing, and then potentially new software that sometimes are connecting machines. They have to interact with your IT and security. How has that conversation gone? Is that a challenge to integrate with kind of you're throwing a lot of new stuff at people, and so is there any challenge in the storytelling of how you bring the people along for the benefits of your technology?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, I'm working on my story for our product. I know John and Anton, who are the co-founders, they definitely have their story down, but I'm working my story because I want it to be authentic and from me and from my background and where I've seen the gaps in the industry. But I do think that I don't know that I see challenges as much as just kind of honing in on my story. I'm trying to be completely upfront with folks, saying, we're going from one space, we're trying to expand into another space, and who's willing to come along for that ride. And so I think the more transparent we can be and telling them where we are and where we've been successful will help drive success with our company and the best outcomes for our customers as well. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, certainly. No, that was great. And thinking kind of even more broadly with kind of the kind of workflow and enterprise kind of sentiment with the software, who would typically be the user of your actual solution? Is it kind of engineers setting up builds, or operators or designers? Who typically interacts most with the tools that you've built?
Yeah, today we have a large user base within the architecture world, the designers, mechanical engineers, and the maker spaces within the universities. And then if you look at some of the enterprise accounts, it's more the design engineers. But I think as you look forward, it's going to start out with the advanced manufacturing space, like where we all kind of start in 3D printing, and and having that workflow for the customer. So it could be the manufacturing manager, production manager, who's teed it up. He's already has all the drawings in a library. He can pull that and then over and then start printing. However, the tool can be used for the designers, and they can see all their iterations of the design, so they don't have to like sit there and look for files. It's automatically saved. So that's a great part with security and with revision control and things like that, because it's recording everything for you, and it keeps it there, as long as you're using the software program. But I see those two kind of spaces eventually, production and whoever's running production using it, as well as the designers on the upfront, upstream. So,
And as you think about kind of your own career and the zigs and zags that it has taken, um, what piece of advice would you give kind of folks that are maybe not as familiar with 3D printing or the additive manufacturing space and potentially thinking about a career in the industry?
it's not for everybody, that's for sure. I think resiliency is something that you need to have when you come over, and um, imagination. It's really about creativity, and can you get out of what you've known forever, like for design. And we think in blocks or 90-degree angles when you're designing, a normal part for injection molding or CNC. You don't necessarily think of like your bone structure and how you might design something if, say, you were a toddler and you've never been exposed to anything. Like, think about how they draw, and it may be a little messy, and maybe it's a far-fetched example, but it's you haven't been exposed to the traditional industry, and if you can come in with that sort of mindset, that creative mindset, the innovative mindset, I think you're going to be wildly successful. But that's going to be key, is being able to, you know I don't know, imagine what the possibilities are.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So,
You've
well,
probably experienced that yourself, right?
yes, there's certainly no shortage of challenges, but you always think about where you can improve from the next day to the next. So
Yeah.
that's great. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining the show today, and wish you luck with the new venture, and we'll certainly keep an eye out on all the progress and accomplishments that you guys have over the coming months and years.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and take care, and let's stay in contact.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.